Good evening. On behalf of the Carbondale Branch NAACP, I would like to welcome all of you to our forum on sickle cell. As you may know from reading our flyers, the month of September is designated Sickle Cell Awareness Month. And so we would like to start by introducing our moderator for this evening, the health chair of the Carbondale Branch NAACP, Dr. Ella Lacey.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's forum, Remember Sickle Cell. Remember Sickle Cell. Remember Sickle Cell. I am Ella Lacey, and I am to serve as moderator, as mentioned by Dr. Flowers. It is my hope that this forum will provide not just conversation, not little tidbits, not just oohs and ahs and oh my goodness, but instead enough information, insight, and motivation to help you to help someone. You may be enabled to help a family member or a friend to get appropriate knowledge or services. You may help an unknown mother to help her child. But our focus tonight will be on getting you to give direct help to a person living with sickle cell disease. We think you will be eager to help when you fully understand why and how you can help. We think your eagerness will increase when you learn how easy your role is and how replaceable your gift is to the receiver, and that gift grows with the receiver of the gift. That's the end for now of why we're here. Let's return to the start of the path. Just as I echoed the title, the session is titled, Remember Sickle Cell, for two reasons. One, if we look backward, we need to remember what happened with sickle cell. The second reason, we want to look forward to see what can we do to help with sickle cell. In the audience tonight, some of the more mature persons may remember that 30, 40 years ago or so, there was a flurry of activities related to sickle cell. Some of those were good and helpful, and some of those were bad and destructive. Starting with the bad, the main thing was that employers at that time, some started to listen to misinformation, disinformation, make choices on their own that became discriminatory toward African-American people for being hired. In some cases, when a person even had sickle cell trait, if they even thought people had sickle cell trait, there was testing required to determine if you had the trait, and then discriminatory practices were administered so that you didn't get certain jobs or you didn't get even to train for certain kinds of employment. So on the positive side, 30 or 40 years ago, there was an effort nationally to get sickle cell disease so that there would be centers within reasonable distance of people so that everyone could get, whether it was screening, diagnosis, treatment, rehabilitation, centers to help to resolve the problem of sickle cell disease. Not necessarily that it would be cured in a reasonable time, but that people having it could know whether they had the trait, and certainly would know as early as possible whether they had the disease, and appropriate services could be rendered. This effort got started, but it fell by the wayside, so that services dropped and little publicity is now given to sickle cell. As a matter of fact, so little is given that in 2022 reports that I have seen, government reports, when mention is made of genetic diseases in the United States, there is absolutely no mention of sickle cell disease among the US population. One other task for this beginning part, and that task is very, very simple. It's called, what is a sickle? Now, our panelists are well prepared to talk about sickle cell disease, sickle cell trait, various implications of sickle cell disease. But I'm just asking about the word sickle. Now, in my previous post, I had a picture of a sickle posted on my wall behind me. I don't have that. I'm at a different site. And as a result, I have to just describe. A sickle is an agricultural tool. It's a hand tool used for cutting hay, was the number one thing. But in some cases, people cut grass or tall weeds with it. You hold the weeds in one hand and you use the sickle in the other. Now, I know there are some people who've seen a sickle. It's a curved, I think of it as a curved knife. If you had a long butcher knife and you were cutting something, it'd be long and straight. But the blade on a sickle is curved. And so that's what sickle cell is actually named after, is the curvature of that tool that was named sickle. In the day that it was named, everybody knew what a sickle was. Unfortunately, now we have to sometimes say crescent shaped or some other shape in order to get people to get the picture. But I thought you'd like, just for the reference, to kind of know what is a sickle. The next thing is to say to you, we operate with a disclaimer. And that disclaimer is that it is not our purpose to provide medical diagnosis, treatment, rehabilitation, or cure for any condition, and certainly not for anything related to sickle cell. This forum is for information, education, and motivation only. End of disclaimer. This forum does invite questions from anyone participating in the webinar. Please use the Q&A and ask questions for clarity of any speaker who has come before us. Save your big complex questions for after the last presenter, and we will allow time for those questions. During this session, we will also show a few motivational videos for your further education. Now, for our panel tonight, we have several parts. In the first part, we'd like to have Rena Witherspoon and Tara Lincoln, both from American Cancer Society. I'm sorry, the American Red Cross, give us an introductory venture into sickle cell disease, sickle cell trait, and however they feel the need to address sickle cell so that we have a better understanding after their presentation. So I will call on Rena Witherspoon first to lead us into that discussion. Rena comes to us from Northeast Texas, the American Red Cross in that section of the country, which includes Tyler, Texas.
It does.
So we are very happy to have Rena presenting to us. Thank you, Rena.
Absolutely. And it is Renee. It looks like Rena, but it's Renee, and that's fine. Thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be here as a representative of the American Red Cross, the biomedical services part of it. And I really tagged in on what you said about sickle cell not being mentioned as far as a genetic disease. And I can full-throatedly say that sickle cell disease is the most common genetic disease in the United States. And I'm very proud of the fact that the Red Cross is stepping up in this time to really recognize the fact that we have great needs in this community. As you said, sickle cell is a disease most commonly characterized by sickle-shaped blood cells. Rather than being round and smooth, they are crescent shaped and somewhat rigid. So they have difficulty going throughout your body. It impacts about 100,000 people in America, largely of African descent. It's most characterized by what we commonly term as pain crisis, where patients with sickle cell disease, people with sickle cell disease go into routine pain crisis. And the most standard of care for that is a blood transfusion. It can also cause acute anemia, tissue and organ damage, and even strokes. Patients with sickle cell disease, they can use upwards to 10 units of blood a month, 100 units of blood a year. I've even recently heard one individual, and it blew my mind, that in their lifetime, they have had 3,000 blood transfusions. That's a lot of blood. Other races can have sickle cell disease, and I'll let others talk about that. But the Red Cross right now, we're mostly focused on the Black community because routinely there are blood shortages when it comes to providing blood for patients with sickle cell disease. And simply put, we need more Black people donating blood. We've always had a diversity arm within the Red Cross, but recently, because of the pandemic, we went from about 4,000 people of African descent donating across the nation down to 1,200. So this put a further strain on an already strained blood supply. So we launched in January 21 what we came to know our Sickle Cell Initiative. And simply put, the theme of this initiative is Our Blood Saves Lives. It's characterized by our desire to educate the Black community as to how and why our blood uniquely saves lives. Some of the facts that are contributing to this is that African Americans are 3 times more likely to match the blood needed for sickle cell patients who are of African descent than those who are not. Today, less than half the blood we provide to these patients are the most compatible unit. That means only 40% of the time are we able to provide that blood, which in turn means that 60% of the time they're getting the next best match. And this can lead to adverse reactions to that blood transfusion. And simply put, even in a pandemic, because of the work that we've been doing, we have found that there are enough healthy individuals that can donate blood. We simply do not know. Like you said, Ella, we're not talking about it. And oftentimes it appears to be a silent disease. However, we are raising our voice and we are educating the Black community to this need. Just another example or just a further drill home this need. Every race and ethnicity has over 600 antigens. Most of us, we know about blood types. If I ask you your blood type, you're gonna say, oh, I'm type O, I'm type B, I'm negative, I'm positive. However, there are over about 600 antigens that individuals have, which are markers on your blood cells. These antigens can be unique to your race or ethnicity. Every race can have unique ones. So when it comes to the Black community, there are antigens, markers on our blood that are unique, which make for our blood transfusion, once again, most compatible when treating these patients. So our objective with this initiative is to grow the number of blood donors who are Black to help patients with sickle cell disease and improve their health outcomes. We seek to help address this health disparity, of which we know that the Black community has many, but we want to, with the Red Cross, I'm very proud of this initiative and what we are doing to help eliminate this health disparity. And I'm here to ask for our help. The hallmark of this initiative is to ask for the help of the community. We need partners to come alongside us because our donors tell us if we make it convenient, they will donate. So we need organizations. We need churches with a high number of Black churches. We need Greek organizations. We're working with the Divine Nine sororities and fraternity groups. We need Black organizations to come alongside us and to help us with this. And I'm happy to say that in our first year, at least in my area, we were able to increase the number of Black people donating by 76%. So needless to say, it does work. We're no different than any other racial group of people. We simply need to be educated and bring about the awareness of why and how we are needed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Renee. Thank you very much. Is Tyra going to join you at this point in further in your presentation?
I think Tyra is, she's on another call. She will be joining me. I think Mindy is part of our group. She is on. I'm not sure if Mindy wants to talk about an actual blood drive because
well, no, that part is for at the end.
Okay.
She's going to do that at the end. But Tyra had planned that we would have more definition on, just the terms, sickle cell anemia, sickle cell trait, and maybe mentioning the various forms of sickle cell, that kind of thing.
Well, I know that sickle cell has a wide spectrum of how people experience sickle cell. I've met individuals who have never had a pain crisis. They have never had a need for a blood transfusion. They mainly control their disease by diet and different things. And then all the way on the other side, we have people who are going in monthly. Of course, because it's a genetic disease, it is the result of two parents having the sickle cell trait, of which there's a 25% chance that you are born, and 1 in every 365 individuals are born with sickle cell disease. Mm-hmm. Does that kind of answer a little bit more?
Well, certainly that helps to bring that out. Mm-hmm. We'll just ask the audience now if they have any questions. Dr. Flowers was monitoring the Q&A already. So Dr. Flowers, are there any questions that have been entered into the Q&A already?
Dr. Lacey, there are no questions at this time in the Q&A.
Okay, that's really perfectly fine. If anyone has specific questions related to what Renee said, go ahead and enter your questions in as we proceed to the next part. Now, for the next part, we are so fortunate to have a few people with us who have very personal stories about sickle cell disease. And we have asked those persons to please share some of their story with us. And they can count on us to treat that story with respect. We respect that they are willing to open and share, and this is very personal information. Now, when they finish speaking, if there are questions you want to ask for clarity or just better understanding, we encourage that very much. But we want to be respectful that this is a very personal story that we're going to hear. And first, for telling a story, is Jerry Robinson. Ms. Robinson is a local mother who serves in Carbondale Public Schools. She's going to share with us about sickle cell disease in her family, and she is quite capable of telling the story herself. So I'll defer to her and let her come to us with the story. Thank you so much for being here today, Jerry.
You are welcome. You're very welcome. Good evening, everyone. Well, when I was 21, I had my first child, and beautiful child, as all mothers think their child is beautiful, and he was. But by the time he was 14 months old, this child began to cry. And it was during the night, and his father was working on the railroad. So nothing I did would stop this child from crying. So I was home alone with this 14-month-old child, wondering why nothing I did would comfort him or to ease his crying. And so I ended up going to Memorial Hospital. And when I got there was a wonderful doctor. His name was Dr. Norman G. Geyer, and he was my son's pediatrician. And he came in and he examined him. And after he had finished examining him, he says, "I need to talk to you." And what he told me was that he had sickle cell anemia. I had never heard of sickle cell anemia, but then the next blow came: there is no cure. And I said, "Well, why is there no cure?" And he said it was a blood disease. And he explained to me about what the blood did. They sickle whenever they're in a pain crisis. And there's two things that can happen with sickle cell, he told me. He can have a sickle cell crisis, which is worse than, if you can wrap your head around it, than the sickle cell pain. But when they're both together, it is very painful for them and very stressful. And keeping in mind, he's only 14 months old and he's my first baby. So they kept him at the hospital and he sent me home without this baby. But he told me to come to his office the next morning, and I did do that. And we were fortunate enough to have a pediatrician who knew a lot about sickle cell anemia. Mm-hmm. And he sat me down and said to me, "This child is going to need a lot of care. This child is going to need a lot of loving, and this child is going to need something to help him with these medical bills." And Dr. Geyer got on the phone and made a call to Springfield. And he was the one who got the medical things, the cards and whatever that my child was going to need. And then he explained to me that the key here was to keep him well lubricated. That's the best word. You have to drink a lot of liquids. If you drink a lot of liquids when they're in sickle cell pain or sickle cell crisis, this will push those sickle cells through. And believe it or not, you need to drink up to a gallon as quick as you can. And that will push them through, those cells through, so normal cells will come through. But I also was told when he sent us to a specialist that my son would not live to get to junior high age. He also told me that chances are by the time he was 14, he would have to have his spleen removed because sickle cell children, it swells up their spleen, which causes more pain for them. But I will say this, I am a praying mother. I am a child of God. And so with this pediatrician and with the one and only Father up above, I prayed for the things that I needed to do. I taught him how to pump those liquids. Of course, he had to be in the hospital. And the thing about going into the hospital with a sickle cell patient, we quickly learned because he was 21 before he had his next episode. And it was a doozy. And and his blood is rare. So they had to cross, that's his blood to get the right type of blood. And when they have a crisis, when they're in crisis, my son is at a 9.5. A man's hemoglobin is 15. A woman's hemoglobin is 13. He functions on a 9. And I was told that 75% of his cells was sickle, and the 25% was the neonatal cells that keeps him going. So we had to learn many things. And I will say this, we went to a specialist. Some were very helpful, some were not. But in the case of having a sickle cell child, at that time, Dr. Raoul was his hematologist, and she was wonderful. And Dr. Abdo became his physician. And they were very schooled in what to do. And whenever he had crisis, a lot of times he could go and they would give him the medication and he could take the medication at home. But then there was times that he had to go in the hospital. And I can truly tell you that my son has been stuck at least over 200,000 times with the needle. And when that is being done, your cells can't take all that. They just can't, your blood cells. And they build up barriers, and the skin gets tough inside, so they can't get through. So this causes a problem. He had to have a port at one time, but then the port got infected after about 3 years. So we're not going to put any more alien things in his body. But with the care that I was taught to do for him, this was wonderful. He has moved along and he knows how to take care of himself. And I'll come back to him in a minute. Then I had my second child, which was Marlon. Marlon does not have the sickle cell trait, nor does he have the sickle cell disease. Then my third son came along and he had sickle cell. Now, Dr. Geyer told me that sickle cell affects your firstborn, it skips the second one and goes to the youngest one, depending on how many children you're going to have. Then it starts all over again. It hits that one, then skips it, whatever, just depending. But usually parents who have a sickle cell child do their best not to have a sickle cell child, but life is life, or have more children, I should say. But we did the necessary things. And so, and I want to say this, and they would tell African Americans that it is a genetic disease and both parents have to have the trait. Well, we found out something. It did run, which my husband did not know, in his family, but it did not run in my family. So I took the test. I do not have the trait, but the trait was high enough in his body that it affected our firstborn child. Now, the baby boy, he was a different story. sickle cell can cause all of the diseases or ailments that we get naturally, sickle cell can cause in them, including blood poisoning. So my youngest son, at that time, he was 5 years old, and this red spot appeared right there. We were at a family reunion, and it got bigger, and he seemed to be getting sick. And then he got hot to touch the skin. Well, we rushed him back to Carbondale because we were in Murfreesboro. And I found out something that I had never heard of before, Salmonella malaise ileus. And you might not believe this, but before we got him there, we heard this sound, and it went psst, just like Arabic, and that was his stomach. It was extending. When we got there, they immediately took this child who was 5 years old. They took all his clothes off of him because he had a fever of 107.7 and climbing. They packed him in ice from his head to his toes. And the staff who was on charge at the hospital that night, they stayed. And I kept saying, is he in danger? Is he in danger? And no one would answer me, but I got my answer because they were all there. That morning, the pediatrician named Norman G. Guy came in, and he says, we're going to have to send him to St. Louis. They sent him to Cardinal Glennon Hospital. When we got there, because of what this sickle cell had caused, he had to see specialists, and they needed to get blood. They would get the blood, but 3 minutes after they would get it, it would crystallize. They did it 5 times. The doctor came in and told me that they was going to put him in ICU. So in ICU, in Cardinal Glennon, which is a children's hospital, he had 14 specialists that took care of him in ICU. He was there for 7 days and 6 nights. Dr. Geyer called and told me that they had got him where he needed to be, and it was time for him to come home. So we brought him home, but he came home to Memorial Hospital. And for the next 2.5 months, he was in the hospital. And they were giving him, they worked on an antibiotic to treat him, which they got it down to a pill. And that pill was as big and as long as your thumb. And but it took care of what it needed to. He had to have surgery because he lost the longevity in his right arm. They did it at night. And when we brought him home, we had a little level there so he could get it. Now, he lived through that. He didn't get sick no more. After that, it took 2 years. He had a common cold. I called the pediatrician. She called in an antibiotic for him. And I had a cold. Actually, I was more sick than he was. But come that Sunday at 3 o'clock, I immediately knew something was wrong. So did his dad and his brothers. And we rushed him to the hospital. And bless his little heart, he kept telling me at 7 years old, he was fine. Quit worrying, Mama. Everything was fine. He had the flu, influenza. But because of the sickle cell, he passed away. He was 7 years old. Now I'm going to go back to my oldest son. My oldest son, who was not going to make it to junior high school, has been through a lot. He has had a lot of, he only started getting blood transfusions when he was 31. And I'm gonna say that was good. At the time, we didn't know that because during that time, there was something called AIDS. And his comment to me was, Mama, I already got a problem. I don't need them to give me something, then I have AIDS on top of it. But in doing so, by the time he got to be 31, we come to find out that you don't just give a sickle cell patient a blood transfusion. And that's what they thought it would do. It would help them get them back on the trail and get them this. No, it's like Renee said, you can give them too much and that builds up iron in your blood when you have too much blood transfusion, which causes them a bigger problem, which is a liver problem. So you don't want that to happen. So by that time, he had Dr. Sinha, who informed me that we're only going to give a transfusion if his hemoglobin drops. Now, while they're sickling, their hemoglobin can drop. It may not drop at all. It can go from a 9 point something down to 6.0. And when it does that, they will give them a transfusion. That brings it back up. But then sometime when they do that, it goes down again because they're still sick. So they may have to do it again. But that's a good thing because now they know when to do it and how to do it. And to end what I'm telling you right now is that my son, which I will not call his name, has taken extremely good care of himself. He listens to his doctors. He does what he needs to do, and he's his own good advocate. He eats all healthy foods and organic drinks and whatever. Matter of fact, he fusses at me because he said, I don't eat right. But to be told that your son would not make it to junior high school and that most sickle cell patients die at the age of 20. I am happy to say that my son is now a middle-aged man of 49. So if you learn what you need to do, you can take, and he met someone, and I will say this, in St. Louis when we was up there, who was also a sickle cell patient, and he was in his 80s. So they got a lot of things wrong, and even though, and now they're finding cures, I will say that. There are things that they can do. There's a better medication to now give oxygen to their blood cells. And he has a good hematologist who has prescribed that for him. And so he has not had a pain crisis or a sickle cell for a year and a half. So with God's grace and mercy and with the medical that they have learned, but Renee is right. For some reason, sickle cell is something that they have not put a lot of work into. In the city of Carbondale, we do not have any hematologists here, and we do not have any sickle cell specialists. They have them over at the Cancer Institute, but we were fortunate enough to have them here at this time. And right now, he does have a wonderful person, a physician taking care of him. And that is the end of my presentation.
Well, Jerry, thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
I know that I speak for the audience members here, one and all, when I say your presentation was touching, but it also was quite informative.
Thank you.
And we truly appreciate your speaking with us. Now, for the Q&A, Dr. Flowers, are there specific questions for Ms. Robinson?
There are some general questions, but nothing specific for Mrs. Robinson.
Okay, we will push those questions on down to the end then, so that they can be asked after the presentation if they still need to be.
May I say something to Miss Renee Witherspoon?
Sure.
Thank you so much for that you put in the chat. That was very grateful. Thank you. Right back at, keep on getting that blood for him, child.
Okay, very nice. Good panelist interaction. We had planned on a second person, but I know she had some job obstacles, like possibly not being able to be available. So I will just attempt her name to see if she has arrived. Onicia Sally. You'll recognize the last name. The first one you may not recognize from the way I pronounced it, but I don't think there was a sign-in with her, and I just didn't know if possibly she was here and would give us a sign through the Q&A. But anyway, we had that presentation by Jerry Robinson, and we had intended to have a person who lives with the trait and to discuss a lot of things that had happened with her and in her life and in her family, but there were other things that prevented her from coming today. So we will move to having a video. It's a short video of a couple of minutes long, and Dr. Flowers is operating that part of the equipment. So we will see another situation.
I had someone tell me with sickle cell when I was much younger that the pain is so severe that you would pray to die. And I never wanted to believe that was true. But when I had my first crisis, oh yeah, it was very, very true. And it is just the worst pain imaginable.
Dr. Flowers, we are hearing but not seeing.
Transfusions to live.
There's no
Having
picture.
had 600 plus blood transfusions, it's a monthly thing. You're told, well, Lydia, we're waiting for a
Okay.
donor and
Great.
we can't find one.
Uh-huh.
We're waiting for a match and we can't find a match for you. Anxious doesn't even begin to describe how you feel. You're just like, oh my goodness, like, because you know, if you don't have that blood, if I don't get that blood, then I'm going to die. And it truly, truly is life or death. And it's terrifying. And that moment when that nurse comes in and she's like, we got your blood. And it's like, you can finally breathe.
Thank you to the fantastic person that donated this blood for me. I'm so, so blessed to have it, and it really means the world, and it's my life, so thank you.
It is so important to receive blood from a similar ethnic background. And the reason that it's so important is because when you are in need of a blood transfusion, you're going to be blood typed similarly. So me being African American, I have the best chance of receiving blood and not getting a rejection and not having a reaction to somebody that's got similar ethnicity as mine. So since I'm African American, it would be great for me to receive blood from someone that's also African American. It reduces the chance of a blood reaction or your body rejecting that blood. Without many African American blood donors, people like myself, people with sickle cell, would not be here. It's just as simple as that. I would not be alive. So that is why it's so important that everyone from every race background, every ethnicity donates blood. Thank you so, so much for giving that gift. So I think I'm a little bit different from other people where they might see a walk in the park as just that, it's a walk in the park, but I see it as such a gift and a blessing and a joy, and I just want to just like savor every single minute of it and treasure it, because I don't know when I'll be able to do it again. I don't know when I'll be in the hospital. I don't know when I'll be having another surgery. So while I'm well, I want to make the most of life.
All right. Again, if we were in person, I think we would be applauding. That was a very, very good clip to give us some idea of a person real up close and personal. Now that we've learned, excuse me, Renee, were you going to say something?
Yes, I wondered if I stories as to what that looks like in real time.
Mhm.
Not only is blood important, but blood in a timely manner. One of the missions of blood banking is to ensure
She froze.
Yes. She might come back in a short while.
Okay, do you want to move on to Mindy?
Um, there she is. All
Sorry.
right, you will have to kind of start over because you froze out on us early.
Yeah, so what I was saying was not only is blood important, but part of blood banking is our mission is to ensure that blood is on the shelf when patients arrive. So when a patient is in a pain crisis, and I've heard it described as, and Jerry maybe can confirm this, somebody stabbing you repeatedly. So we don't even want patients waiting a long time. And I've experienced times that it's taken us 2 days to actually find it, that blood. And when you're talking about antigens and trying to prevent those reactions of which Jerry talked about, this is very important. And I really, again, want to stress the importance of us as Black people. And it's not like a kidney. You don't give a kidney away. Blood is replenishable. It replenishes itself. So very important. We don't want to wait 2 days trying to find that blood product. We want people donating. And again, there are very healthy people out there. We need you donating so that when patients do arrive, and as Jerry said, maybe you want to prevent a transfusion, but in the case that we can't, we want to make sure that you can get the most compatible unit. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
That's a very important part to add there, Renee. We thank you for doing that.
Amen.
Are there any questions in the Q&A specific to that part, Dr. Flowers?
No, they're not.
Okay. I guess here I would just like to say, now that we've learned some particulars about sickle cell and heard some powerful stories in person, well, on Zoom and on video, about the impact of sickle cell disease on families and individuals, we're now going to ask the American Red Cross reps to return to delineate a few more particulars about the blood drive, the effort we hope to get from people. We hope that people would put questions in the Q&A that they really would like to have addressed related to what Renee and Mindy will be saying. And I think it's already been clarified here that I know I've heard it alluded, all blood is red, and the whole issue of why Black people need to help with sickle cell disease and other conditions that cause quite a bit of problems so that the blood can be present, just as Renee was just saying about blood bank. So I think maybe before we go into what Mindy and Renee say, we could do our third video. Linda, does that fit, or would you rather wait until after they give us?
Let's wait.
Okay, we'll wait. So I didn't tell you about Mindy, who is with the American Red Cross also. She's been with the Southern Illinois, Southeast Missouri, and Northeast Arkansas region of Red Cross. So she's right here at home in Southern Illinois, compared to Renee, who is all the way in Texas. So let us hear from the two of them, however they want to do it, to kind of drive home the points they feel necessary for us to understand even more fully about the blood drive and donating blood. Okay, Mindy, you want to start?
Let's see, is Mindy going to take that, or I can? I
Okay.
don't see where, so I'll go ahead. So in general, you have to be in good health to donate. That's general. And there are some reasons why people can't donate. But I mostly want to talk about some of the barriers for donation for the Black community. Many of the misconceptions. Number one is many people believe if you have high blood pressure, you cannot donate blood. This is not true, and it may have been that way at some time. However, I have blood pressure, high blood pressure. I take my pill. When you come and donate blood, you're going to get a mini health history, which means they're going to check your blood pressure. They're going to check your hemoglobin level. And just as you said, as far as, and I think Jerry made mention of this part about that as males, the hemoglobin target is 15, females is 12. I think that's what she said. And the Black community, we struggle in general to meet those levels. So just in having an education, we do have materials on our website on different things that you can eat to increase your iron level. I know many people think, oh, red meat and iron, but there are many other things. If you don't eat meat, there's still other things that you can eat that increases your iron levels so that, number one, you can just be overall healthy, but in order to be able to donate blood. I encourage people to go to our website to find that. So on the day of the blood drive, they're gonna take your hemoglobin level, your pulse, they're gonna take your blood pressure. If you have high blood pressure, you're taking your pill and it's regular that day, you are going to be able to donate blood. So don't count yourself out. Another misconception is if you have diabetes. That is not true. As long as, again, you're taking your meds, you are healthy, whatever you're doing. Now, of course, anything you talk to your doctor, because there are some things within your medical condition that's between you and your doctor, but I'm talking in general. So if what you're doing is keeping you at a healthy rate, as Jerry says, she's taught her son how to be healthy with his condition. So many of us know how to live healthy with our conditions. So those conditions don't necessarily count you out. So do not count yourself out from the ability to donate blood. And again, there are many things you can do to build that. Another misconception, and it's mostly with the young community, is if you've had a tattoo. It used to be that you had to wait a year if you had a tattoo. However, most tattoo parlors are licensed now, and so you can donate blood. Also, in the pandemic, many people are talking about if you've had the COVID vaccine, you can still donate blood. So again, in general good health, we want you, in order to prepare for a good donation, you have a very good night's sleep, you have to eat. Many people think it's like going to the doctor and you don't eat from 12 o'clock until you donate. That's not true. You need to eat to have a good experience, because we don't just want you to donate blood one time. We want you to have a positive experience so that you can become a lifelong blood donor. I can tell you, I've been with the Red Cross 25 years. And since I've been in the field working in this initiative, I mean, the passion for this, I can donate every 56 days, and I am donating pretty much every 56 days. And I believe that my blood donation, when you donate blood, if you download our app, many times you will find out where your blood went. And so we'll determine whether you become a sickle cell fighter. I am a sickle cell fighter. And I know that my blood has gone to a 60, actually, I think he was 80-year-old sickle cell patient. And as Jerry said, that's kind of outstanding because many people don't live that long. But we are finding that people are living longer, they're taking care of themselves. But I want whoever that patient is, and I've known of instances where there was one person in the entire country that was the match for a sickle cell patient. In my training session, we asked people with sickle cell, what was their challenge? What are you afraid of? And one young lady, her eyes got big, and she said that there was one person who was providing that most compatible match for her. And her fear was that either he or she was going to become unhealthy and no longer able to donate or pass away. This is not acceptable, you guys. Again, we can do this. This is a health disparity. There are many things we can't do anything about. And she knows a lot about the medical community. She was confirming a lot of things for me, but this is one area that we can eliminate. We can do away with this portion of it. So again, as you can see, I'm really passionate about that because I hear stories. I know one individual, when he was a teenager, he had a stroke. So for 3 years, he had to have routine blood transfusions to prevent a stroke. I've met an individual who goes in the hospital preemptively every month because he don't even want to even have chance going into a crisis. So he goes ahead and has that blood transfusion. So medical science has come a long way. I see somebody asked about CRISPR, and I just want to say that is not my area of expertise. That would be inviting our medical director. That's more scientific than my pay grade. So I can't answer that part, but I do know that there are CRISPR treatments. It's where people are gene splicing, and I think there's one person in the country who has been cured that way. So we do know that medical science is coming a long way. As I've been in the field, I've been on panels where, as Ella started out, wasn't a lot of conversation, but I'm telling you guys, I've been on panels, been a part of panels where people across the world are talking more and more. We seem to be in an era that there's more conversation surrounding sickle cell disease, and I'm very excited about what is happening. So I do know there is hope. I do know an individual who had I think it's a stem cell, maybe Jerry could help with this part, and they were cured, but I know that doesn't work for everyone. So in the meantime, so this is in the meantime, when they find a cure, I just want us to know that blood transfusions are very much a part of the care that is necessary. And we definitely want to make sure that the people who look like you and I are getting the blood that they need. Now, when there are others, and we talk about other people that have sickle cell, but when they show up at the hospital, there is enough representation from that demographic for them to find the blood that they need. It's only when it comes to people of African descent that we're not able to find that match. I probably answered more than you asked me, Miss Ella.
No, that's great. That's absolutely great. We thank you for that.
Yes.
So Mindy, who is Mindy Hendricks, I couldn't think of her last name at the time.
Did she come?
But we're ready for you to just pitch in wherever.
Perfect. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. I had tried to speak several times and I was like, I don't think that this is working. So I had to sign out and sign back in. But first off, I want to say thank you guys so much for being a part of this and actually involving me with this. I think it's incredible. And I've learned a lot from listening to your stories, and thank you for having us. I do want to talk to you guys a little bit about the blood drive we have coming up. This is one of many that we have in Southern Illinois, but this one specifically is a special one. We are going to be having a blood drive on September the 23rd. It's a Friday at the New Zion Missionary Baptist Church. We're going to be there from 2 until 6. At this blood drive, we are hoping to find about 35 blood donors, at least 35 blood donors that are going to be able to come out and donate blood for us. Yep, there's the flyer for it. We're going to have $20 Amazon e-gift cards. So those will come through email about 2 weeks after your blood donation. Also, some T-shirts and swag bags for every presenting donor as well. So it's going to be a really incredible blood drive. I think it's going to be something that will happen more often in Carbondale areas specifically. But, you know, blood expires in 42 days. And like Renee was saying, you can donate blood every 56 days. So as often as you can, please help us try to find a blood drive. And let's start with this one here on the 23rd and have a big successful blood drive that you tell your friends and your family about all the information that you learned from today, and bring it out, and let's celebrate and kind of join together on Friday the 23rd to donate blood.
Okay, thank you, Mindy. I think we've hit some of the key points related to sickle cell and the blood drive in the interest of people living with sickle cell anemia. We have another video that we'll go to, and then we'll do some question and answer. And we'll do the video, then the question and answer. Okay.
I've been in the hospital since I was 2 with sickle cell, but the ones I can remember clearly is like 6, 7 and up. Sometimes my blood would clot and it'll make like pain in my joints, and sometimes hard to breathe, hard to move. It's just pain that you can never see.
It's a constant fear with my 2 sons who are still here that at any time they could actually succumb to this disease. It still kills people.
I had an elder brother who had sickle cell, and eventually he passed to sickle cell. So I just thought, oh man, I might die by this disease because he did. In my family, we're all game oriented. So I know I can't really do that much in real life, but I excel in like video games and board games and stuff like that. So that's how I kind of cope with it.
Get it out of here!
When I'm in the hospital and I don't have blood because my blood is sickling, I just feel miserable. I don't want to move. I like curl up in a ball. And that's how a sickle cell crisis feels to me. It feels like something was broke inside my body. The only thing that can fix it is blood.
We need as many people who can to donate blood, because that's the only thing that helps a person with sickle cell in a pain crisis.
Blood transfusions, they make such a difference. The blood is really what gets me to calm down and get back to normal.
So it's definitely important that the Black community, African American community, that we do come out and answer the call, because we the ones who need this. We're the ones who suffer from sickle cell the most.
It's a gift, honestly. Blood is a gift.
Okay, let's see what's in the Q&A.
I think Renee kind of addressed the first one that talks about the first. Then the second one says, at what age? The first question, at what age are people usually diagnosed? And is there routine screening available?
Do either of you want to address that? I mean, the data would show that it's by 6 or 7 months now, a person with sickle cell anemia is usually diagnosed. A baby is diagnosed by 6 or 7 months old.
And that has moved up. Because
Yes.
it was 14 months. Was when
Right.
it go up.
I do believe at this point, and Jerry, maybe you know this better, that when you're born, African Americans are tested at birth at this point throughout the country for sickle cell disease.
The question is, are they tested?
Yes.
No, they are
They're
not.
not.
No.
They are not. Also, while I'm at it, I found out something myself. African Americans have lower white cells than anyone, and we are never tested when we go to a doctor for white cells. And my doctor found it out, and she sent me to a hematologist to make sure I didn't have a disease or something coming on. And what it was, that I had lower white cells. Now they're back up to normal because he put me on the medication to get me there. And the thing that he put me on, Renee, has to do with getting that white cell blood level up. So that's dealing with blood too. So I made that announcement in my church to all of our church family. Have your white blood cells checked. The blood is real important.
Excuse me, Jerry. Thanks so much for that. Now, at this point, though I had not planned for any personal entry, since you mentioned white blood cells, I've asked you to come and speak personally. I have to also speak personally and just very briefly, but probably 8 or 10 years ago, I was found to have a low white cell count. And after much seeing of specialists in St. Louis and Carbondale, I had a low white cell count. Now, the thing that's very, very strange about me having a low white cell count is I have almost no infections, no illness. I mean, I'm that person who doesn't have colds. I've never had the flu. I've been among people with infectious diseases and I didn't get them. So I'm considered a little strange. But the reason I tell it now is my daughter has just had a finding of low white cell count, just last week. And we're reluctant to do medication related to it. We say, let them observe. And if there's something that comes up that indicates medication for a specific reason, I mean, a very verifiable reason, then we will go with that. But I think maybe there's something to be studied related to low white cell count among some populations if you aren't getting all the infection. Now, what we think is that, your count ought to be there and you'd probably be getting more infections. That's the general thought. You would be more susceptible to infections. But I can tell you, in my personal case, that is certainly not the case. So anyway, I keep it monitored, at least annually, but often more than that and everything. But that was just a little aside from issues of the red blood cell issue that we're here for. But since we were talking about it, I thought I should just mention that.
Thank you.
Go
ahead.
No, go ahead. You're okay.
I also wanted to mention with American Red Cross, with this new initiative, and I've heard many people that I've asked, like Jerry, her husband not even knowing he had the trait. There are many people who don't know that they have the sickle cell trait in order that they can be aware of the chances if they marry someone. These are conversations that should take place. So we do test. When you identify as African American, you donate blood, we're going to test to see if you have the trait, which is part of this initiative. So that's a very good thing that we're providing to the community.
You know, the issues of the trait have caused problems, as I mentioned in the introduction, where at some places they had started to test. Well, they can't test you for it now unless you ask for the test. But it did cause people to lose jobs. It caused people to not be able to go into certain types of training because they had the trait. But anyway, I do hope that we'll work on sickle cell a little bit more comprehensively while we're working on it this time, so that we get things in place that's going to make it in the proper perspective. You know, something that we didn't say today, most of us who've been around it know it very well, that the sickle cell trait arose in Africa and places where there was malaria.
Yes.
So having the trait was a life-saving phenomenon to prevent you from having malaria. And I've lived places where I saw people dying from malaria by large numbers. So sometimes I think we need to be sure we sort of expound on that some places, so young people don't feel, no matter how many times we say it, other people have, you know, conditions, genetic conditions that affect their population. No matter how many times we say it, there's still some stigma attached to it, and young people sometimes feel the effect of that stigma and don't want to talk about sickle cell, or that they even have a really good friend with sickle cell, like there's something wrong outside of the medical realm of things. So anyway, that's something we probably need to work on just a little bit of communicating it very well.
I agree, Ella. And in my talking about it, and we not only say it's education, but it's awareness. And the young people that when I talk, they more readily step up and talk about it. And they're very grateful of the conversation, because we also advocate for support. When people understand, there are people who said they didn't understand until we started talking about some of what happens, because many times they do suffer in silence. They want to be treated just like everyone else.
Right.
But I think as a community, we need to know how to support one another. So I believe there is more of an emphasis. I'm not aware of some of the history, what you talk about, where it was a negative. But what I'm seeing in this era, that I'm seeing appreciation. And as we get into discussion, those in the audience, as we become aware, I did a presentation to a board once in Corsicana. And after I did my presentation, she said that she had a child with sickle cell disease. No one else knew it. So there are people among us, I want us to just be aware, that have sickle cell disease. And so we need to support them, wrap our arms around them. And that's why I'm very passionate. My passion comes out because I feel that this is doable and that they're deserving of our support. I'm very proud. That's why I put that comment about Jerry. She's being a great mom, being educated. Education is power. The more we're educated, the more we educate our community, so we know it takes away that stigma. Because I have high blood pressure. To me, it's no different. So then as people understand high blood pressure, it's not a stigma to me. It's so then we have to learn how to embrace. And like you said, there's a positive as far as malaria, and the medical community is making strides. We're coming toward hopefully a cure someday. But in the meantime, these are things that we can do to support one another and encourage one another, and to stand up when people are in a crisis, to understand that they're not going to be 100% all the time, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I work in an environment where most companies now, we talk about a team environment. So we become a team, and the more that I'm aware of people around me, and there may be some circles that you can't, but what I've seen is support all the way around. And it's not, and this education is not just to the Black community. This is to the community at large, so that we can look up and look around us and see these individuals within our midst, to make sure that they're receiving the care that they need. And that's why I'm so proud to be part of the Red Cross and what we're doing, because we're on the forefront of talking about this. In fact, there's another live, and we have famous people that are talking about it right now. At this time, we have another Instagram live going on with prominent people in the community stepping up to say, I have sickle cell trait, I have sickle cell disease. So kudos to you, Ella, and to Jerry, to Jennifer, for everyone stepping up. I can see Jerry smile here, and I hope that you feel supported in this, with us doing this.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Renee, that's very,
Carbondale.
very beautiful.
Okay.
And once again, as we talk about the pandemic, this is going over there for a moment, but we often talk about how terrible that we had to use Zoom. But you see, Renee, if we didn't have Zoom, we would not have had you here from Texas today.
Yes.
And you had some valuable things to say to us. You help us to get to a better place related to sickle cell. So thank you for that. Linda, are there more?
There are several more questions.
I'm sorry.
Okay, next question. What do you think are the barriers to why people who are able to give blood choose not to? How can we get more people, particularly of African descent, to see the benefit in giving blood?
I love that question, because again, for me, it's education. I'll give you a little bit of how I really realized, again, we're no different than any other demographic. But if you think about our history and the implications of our history here in the United States, many things, I know when I'm a child of the 60s, 70s, I don't want to tell my age totally, but when I was growing, of course, let me back up. I've been with the Red Cross 25 years. Started in Omaha, Nebraska, and I used to go out to some of the rural areas where mostly Caucasian, our Caucasian brothers and sisters, but I love engaging people and asking them, what started you donating blood? And there was something that people repeated over and over again that I caught on to, and it was, well, you know, my grandfather donated blood, my mother donated blood, and so I donate blood. So it's just like anything else. When you're exposed to something, then you will do it. We don't have the exposure. In my community, I was raised in the projects of Saginaw. I never heard about a blood drive. No blood drive came to my community.
They weren't.
And so in the blood banking, just like as Ella talked about some of the challenges that we have in the Black community, it impacts every sphere of where we live, operate, medical, or whatever. So what I'm finding, the biggest barrier is we simply do not know. I can guarantee you, most of you on here, but Jerry, because she knows a lot, did not know that people have antigens that are unique to their race or ethnicity. I didn't know that. I knew about blood donations after I started with the Red Cross, but even just coming into this information, knowing that I had something unique for people who look like me, that's the impetus that we need to overcome. Yes, we hear the, oh, I'm afraid of needles. And so what I find is people simply need education, exposure. Sometimes when people tell me, well, I'm a little afraid, I invite them to come to the blood drive, because you take away the stigma. People, you don't know what people have conjured up in their mind. How much blood are you taking? How much blood? Your body has 10 to 12 pints. We take a little less than a pint, and within no time, it's replicated. People don't know. You're only on the bed for like 5 to 10 minutes with the needle in your arm. So people, we have to take the stigma away, expose them. I invite them to the blood drive. I've had many people that come to the blood drive, and I ask them to stand there and talk to someone who has donated. They ask all their questions. How do you feel? And they see people getting on the bed, getting up, and so they donate. So I find that the key to what is the barrier, like anyone else, we just need the exposure. We have programs now that we're in high schools, and the younger people are, and they're getting used to donations. It happens. So there are historical barriers as far as the medical. I understand that, for instance, many people view us as a medical entity, and we know with sickle cell patients or patients overall, sometimes as a community, we have not felt the love. And so there is some hesitation as to when you're like, oh, well, what, testing my blood, what are you testing for? So there are some, I would say, hesitancies there that can be barriers also.
Another beautiful answer, Renee. But the high school part, we didn't mention the lower age, 17. You can donate at 17 and up, all the way up. So,
Yes.
Dr. Flowers, is there another
Yes,
question
here.
you merged together?
Here's two. Is the Charles Drew program still a focus of the Red Cross? And then someone wants to know if you can request a test for the sickle cell trait with a newborn. And if someone comes to the blood drive and their iron is low, for example, they want to know, will they still be tested for the sickle cell trait?
So two of those questions I can answer. If your iron is low, no, we do not test. You have to actually complete the blood donation to be tested. So, and then what was the first question?
Charles Drew, is that still a focus?
Yes, so I do know, and you're probably, there are some places in the country where something similar to the sickle cell initiative that they've operated, maybe the same type of program, and it's been called Charles Drew. Charles Drew, for those of you who don't know, Charles Drew is our first medical director. And I want to say, again, I'm proud of the fact that Black people have been here at the Red Cross from its inception. In fact, Frederick Douglass knew Clara Barton, who is the founder of the Red Cross. So as Black people, we should be very proud that we have come alongside the Red Cross. We're part of what the Red Cross is. Charles Drew was our first medical director, a man, an African-American and he actually is responsible for developing some of the process that we still use today in what am I trying to say? In the storage of blood and plasma and platelets. So you will find most blood Red Cross chapters, we have rooms named by him. He's very prominently, but that Charles Drew program, it may be operating and maybe they're not using that name anymore because we're really highlighting sickle cell at this point.
Right. Okay, Dr. Flowers, I think we're going to have to bring it to a close. We have used our time up. I think we used our time very, very wisely because everything just kind of fit together. And it was a first meeting in many years that we've had in this area on sickle cell. And so maybe we'll get some audience feedback sometime that will encourage us as to which direction to go with more. So again, I thank all the panelists and everybody who worked with us in getting this together. Thank you so much. And we're going to sign off. I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Flowers, who is going to do the closing remarks related to the program.
Well, thank you, Dr. Lacey, and thanks so much to our panel for sharing your time, your expertise, your stories. Thanks to Dr. Lacey, our health chairperson, and thanks to all of you who chose to spend your time with us this evening. We look forward to seeing all of you. Bring your family, bring your friends to the blood drive. September 23rd, New Zion Baptist Church on Robert A. Stall's Avenue, and that is from 2 to 6 o'clock p.m. If you need additional information, if you know someone who may want to look at the recording of this, they can do so on the Carbondale Public Library website, Facebook page, as well as the Carbondale, Illinois NAACP Facebook page as well. You can get the flyer on our Facebook page to share with your family and friends. Again, thanks so much, everyone, and good night.
Good night. Thank you.